All right. Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Natalie Katona of To All the Men I've Tolerated Before. Um, I'm trying. Oh my gosh, I lost our uh, banners.
You had banners?
I did have banners. I had one banner and now it went away, but I can type it again.
Sad. Well, you tried.
I tried. Why don't you introduce yourself while I'm typing?
Hi, friends. I'm Julia Washington. I'm the host of Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous, and I am the co host with Natalie of Still Comfy.
And today we are figuring out if George of the Jungle still makes us comfy. Spoiler alert, it probably does because we love Brendan Fraser.
I still love him in Encino Man more.
Oh no, where'd he go? All right. I'm trying to get
I
to do
just,
it.
it's to make it do the ticker. You got to
Yeah.
click the thing when you're editing it.
I think I clicked the thing twice,
Ah,
is what I did. There
gotcha.
it is. All right. Well, this is Still Comfy, where we explore our favorite comfort movies and TV shows from years past. And I got to watch George of the Jungle last night. And if you don't know anything about me, you know that I had a heck of a past 2 weeks. It was very emotional because Matt Mercer tried to kill all of my friends on Critical Role. So I needed George of the Jungle. Matt Mercer tried to kill all of my friends on Critical Role, and then I found out that Abria Iyengar actually did shows at Gen Con that I could have seen if Gen Con had actually made me aware that they were there. So it was
Yeah, it
very
sounds like,
emotional, but it's
yeah.
fine because now I got to watch Brendan Fraser look like a big dope in a loincloth, and honestly, I couldn't be happier about it. This is peak Brendan Fraser. Peak, like, that man should be wearing a loincloth at all times. Brendan Fraser.
Is it really peak Brendan Fraser?
I,
Do you really think that's true?
in my heart, yes.
Okay,
In
okay.
my
I feel like
heart,
that's more accurate.
I like, I understand. Okay, so remember a couple of weeks ago when you were like, Brad Pitt's really hot in Thelma and Louise? And I'm like, no, he's not. He doesn't even look like a grown up. Well, I understand that Brendan Fraser looks more like a grown up in The Mummy. We love The Mummy. But George of the Jungle, with that, like, literally his smile can cure depression in
Yeah,
this
he's a
movie.
cutie. I still stand by my statement that I've been telling you for 2 weeks that Encino Man is still my favorite Brendan Fraser movie.
And that's fine. But it was my turn to choose, and I chose George of the Jungle.
And you know
George,
what?
George,
The
George of the
internet was like,
Jungle.
now that you've watched this movie, you should watch Blast from the Past.
I
And I was
love
like,
Blast from the
oh, yeah,
Past.
that's right. I forgot that was his movie.
Someone
like,
brought that up to me too. Like, are you going to do Blast from the Past? And then I was like, well, if we do Blast from the Past, we have to do Pleasantville.
yeah, yeah.
We had to do a double feature. If you are joining us in our live audience, I will remind you that we can't see you unless you comment and say hello. So please
Mhm.
make sure. And if you're watching the replay, we're so glad you're here. And as a bonus feature, if you still write comments in real time, like my friends do sometimes, I will still respond to them with what I would have sassily told you during the show.
I'm sad that I can't comment as a participant because StreamYard won't let me.
Oh no.
I know, because then I could type in hello, new friends,
Hello, new friends.
but
Even,
it says no.
hmm, I forget that as the person who's running the room, I just get all of these privileges that you
Yeah.
don't get.
yeah.
All right. Where to start with good? Number one, George of the Jungle. I have no notes. He didn't offend me. I laughed the entire time because I was like waiting. I was like, what if George of the Jungle is A, actually stupid, and B, offensive? It was the early 2000s, if
It
not
was
90s.
1997.
It was 1997, everybody.
Yeah.
What if it was stupid or offensive? And it
I mean,
really wasn't.
there were a couple lines in there. I remember because I was 13 when it came out,
Uh huh.
so I don't know if I was the demographic for it at that point because it definitely feels like a little kid movie.
Mm-hmm.
In the way that, it wasn't necessarily designed for your parents to sit with you other than like maybe your mom to stare at Brendan Fraser because he was half naked the entire time. Not even half naked. He was like
He wore that blanket poncho.
95% naked the entire time practically.
He wore that blanket poncho, which, what a look.
Yeah, for like 2 minutes of the film. But there were some comments. So like so after I watched it, I was like, I mean, it's cute, it's fun, it's lighthearted, but there's a couple things that make me feel a little weird. So then I went to the internet and I was like, talk to me about George of the Jungle. And then the original was done, the cartoon was done from, I think it first aired in 67.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a spoof of Tarzan. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, yes, obviously it's a spoof of Tarzan. Remind me about Tarzan. And then the internet reminded me that Tarzan was an early 20th century story about, you know, a Viscount who goes to Africa. And then I was like, okay, here it comes. All the shit that everybody believed about the continent of Africa that's not accurate because they were deemed savages on the continent of Africa. And so like, I don't think that I don't think like, and no one had a criticism of this film, like no
Right.
one in 1997. Everyone's like, it's delightful, it's lovely, Leslie Mann is unconventionally beautiful, da, da, da. All those things are true, but there was like few tiny little things where I was just like, nope. Like Holland Taylor makes a comment about, you know, going to the jungle and being one of those women who catches some sort of jungle fever.
Oh, there was Holland Taylor. She's scary as fuck in this movie.
Yeah, and that line, I was like, well, you could take that, you could leave it, or you could, you know, if you're coming from a different place in life, that could potentially be an offensive line.
Yeah. During, I think it was our last live about A League of Their Own, I made reference to The Family Stone being the most tense movie I've ever had to sit through. And jungle fever is one of the phrases that my grandmother used inappropriately when describing why that couple would be having a hard time. I was like, Grandma, God damn.
Yeah.
The thing of it is, about this movie, I felt
or maybe
like
she said one of those jungle diseases. Either way,
I think it was
because
jungle diseases.
because the continent of Africa has such a terrible, it has a PR problem mainly because of white people.
It truly does.
There were certain statements and phrases where it was just like, and you don't necessarily catch them unless you've been hearing them your whole life. You know what I mean?
I think what makes me feel better in my soul is that the ignorant people who should be saying the ignorant things are the people who are saying the ignorant things.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you open up on a beautiful Leslie Mann, and I forgot that taking videos in Africa wasn't just her job. This was like her eat, pray, love trip.
Yeah.
So I forgot. I was like, man, I really wanted this job when I was a kid. She's on vacay. That's the job I wanted. I wanted to just be on vacay.
Be on vacation.
And like, she's clearly like doing it to like try and get herself immersed into it and be respectful to her guides. And she's listening to them and she like gives it over to them. And then Lyle, who is white male fragility in its purest definition.
Yeah.
He comes in and then he starts making all of the ignorant comments. And I was like, that is exactly who should be making the ignorant comments. So, because I want children to know that if you make ignorant comments like that, they are a bad man. Do not marry them.
Yeah. And I do appreciate that. Like, it was very clear that the people making statements that were, you know, offensive-ish or offensive, period, were the bad guys of the movie, you know, Lyle and Holland Taylor, who it's so hard. Like, it took me years to stop calling her Holland Tunnel. And I don't know why.
Never.
Like, I don't know why I couldn't remember her last name was Taylor. And she and Sarah Paulson are just adorable together.
They're in love with one another. And it's fantastic. Another thing that I appreciated about the Lyle dynamic while they were in the continent of Africa is all of the humor is at Lyle's expense. It's now I lost track of my sentence.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's at, you know, all of the humor is at Lyle's expense. And therefore, the like guides and the people who are the actual experts of Africa, they get to have the upper hand there because it is their community and what they do. It was very much like when the Uncle and the Beast movie was trying to explain to Idris Elba how you can approach a lion and hug them if you really wanted to. I was like, well, he is the expert.
Yeah.
And if we really did listen to the experts, we would all be in a way hell better place with the animal kingdom.
100%, 100%. Yeah, and I forgot what was his name. What's his name? Josh Da
Lyle.
No, the actor's name.
Oh, I don't know. I know that I love him.
Josh David Charles or something like
Yeah.
that. He's got like he's a three name. I think they're all first names kind of guy. And so I forgot that he was Lyle. So when he came on screen, I was like, "Oh, you're so
But
cute."
you're the worst.
And then you're like the
The
worst
absolute
human
worst.
ever. Like guys like you still exist and it makes me
And
sick.
they took their notes from you.
Pretty much.
Well,
Because there are people who watch this movie who didn't pick up the fact that, he wasn't
he was
like
a bad
that he was a
person.
bad person and that he's the victim because I feel like that's
I
basically whitehood sometimes.
I would just like love to have a flashback of how Ursula even like tried to date Lyle. Like, how did this happen? Like, we get that
Cuz
Holland Taylor
yeah,
really
cuz
wanted it to happen.
they're San Francisco elite. Like that was I don't know what San Francisco's overrun with like brotex at this point. So like I can't speak for now. But in 1997, like it had its own version of like how New York has like a
Yeah,
society and all that stuff. It had its own version of that and they were definitely that.
they couldn't find anyone more charming than Lyle.
Maybe they thought he was charming and then Ursula woke up because she like had this awakening trip and she was like, "Oh, Lyle's trash. I'm done." Cuz that happens. Like
Oh
you don't
yeah.
know that anything different exists and that you could want something else until you like leave and learn.
No, Lyle is exactly how it feels to date a privileged white man. Like, I have dated this man. Like, when he throws Ursula in front of the lion, I was like, oh, I remember that in my own life. It wasn't a lion, but I was laying in bed with a man on vacation in a remote cabin. And I think I heard the front door of the cabin open. Like, I feel like I heard someone get into the cabin. And he went, cool, go downstairs and check.
What? No.
I was
No.
like, well, that's how every slasher movie starts.
Yeah, and then
Like,
I would have been like, "Bro, I'm black. We all know I die first. Why don't you
exactly.
check?"
Well, and then like Lyle, when he's fucking around on that bridge, that fucking bridge, and then someone falls off of the bridge,
That was like, oh my god, that
I
was
was,
really hard for me to watch.
I was like, that is exactly why when we go to Newport Aquarium and we do the rope bridge, like that goes over the shark tank. So it's like this, like, ooh, do the dangerous shark tank bridge. I tell my
Mm-mm.
friends, I was like, fuck around and find out if you're gonna jump up and down on this bridge, if you're somehow gonna make my phone fall out of my like pocket for the sharks to get, if you're gonna like amp my anxiety up, like fuck around and find out. I will start punching privates.
Oh my gosh. So, on that note, my former sister-in-law works at an aquarium. She's a marine
Yep.
biologist, and one of her jobs is to jump into the tank with the sharks and feed them or clean out
Oh,
the tank.
that's fun. I'd love
Mhm.
to talk to her. I love sharks. I love aquariums. I just don't want to be unsuspecting falling into the shark tank.
Yeah, at her aquarium where she works, they have alligators or crocodiles.
Hmm.
Whatever, it doesn't matter. They both will chomp you and you will lose a limb.
Yeah.
And so the way that it's designed where they are, it's actually really hard to potentially get into their areas like on accident and I appreciate that because I feel like sometimes zoos don't think about that.
No.
Or aquariums and stuff don't always think about that.
Sometimes
Um
when we made the switch from like zoos being like places of like sadness to like zoos aesthetically looking like the habitats of where the animals
yeah, more of a
should come
sanctuary.
from and more
Mhm.
of a sanctuary, we let go of some of the like boundaries between us and the animals. And it's like, oh, those were probably there for a reason, though.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, where she works, it's like a refuge. Like
Yeah.
they rehabilitate a lot of sea creatures and send them
Wow.
back into the wild and stuff. She loves it. Like she like when she got her degree in marine biology and all the things. And when she listens to this playback, she's gonna know exactly that I'm talking about her. And I don't know if she'll be happy about that.
Yes. I
we're
want
friends. Like
I want to
I
talk to
just texted her
her.
yesterday and I was like, I
I
miss
want
you.
I want pictures of the sharks. I want to
Yeah.
know all of her marine animal names, okay?
Yeah,
I know
she's
that.
actually the reason why I don't say jellyfish because that's not what they are. They're just jellies. It's a jelly.
Jellies.
And so when people
Jellies.
say jellyfish, I'm always like, oh, you don't have a marine biologist who yelled at you about that
Yeah.
in your life. Same with like starfish, they're sea stars. It's like, so there's like little things now where I'm just like, damn it, she's ruined me.
Damn it. Damn it. But Lyle in the white fragility, he, oh my God. He just like, so he crashes on the vacay and her entire demeanor is like, oh God, what a buzzkill.
Yeah, 100%. She is so disappointed he's there and he doesn't pick up on that. And I feel like, again, it's that cis het white whatever. Are you typing a banner
Yeah, but then I forgot what you said because I tried to
about
move on to white fragility. And then
Lyle and his
like,
cis het white privilege?
right, and then it's just one of those things where it's like he comes and he I for one thing, like we've all been in a room with a white man who like comes into a new situation and then he decides that he knows everything even though they're clearly with people who are paid to know everything and the
Oh,
lady who's been in Africa.
it drove me nuts. The interactions between him and the guys who were
Yes,
clearly like you know, and then how they were pretending not to speak English. I was like, I do the same fucking thing.
I did the same fucking
Honestly,
thing.
with people like that, I'd be like, and people think I speak Spanish all the time, so I'd just be no habla English. But then
No
we'd be in
habla.
really big trouble when somebody did speak Spanish,
Oh
showed up, and I'd be like,
yeah. Oh,
guess what? I can only order tacos.
yeah. So remember, ladies, the moral of the story with Lyle is you don't have to marry the first motherfucker who asks.
Word.
Which,
That's like our mom's generation. We've evolved beyond that.
but have we? Because I'm thinking about all of the movies that we watched when we were kids, and that was like a huge theme, right? Like the douchebag boyfriend comes around, and you're like, oh my God, I forgot that this is how you treated me after you've had like one growth moment. And you're
Mhm.
like, I agreed to marry you because you like asked. And then like the whole movie is about like derailing that relationship for someone else and I'm like, man, but I still know people who married the first person who asked and didn't even think about it.
I've been asked several times and I've said no to every single one because I just thought you're gonna eventually drive me crazy. And do we really
And
want that?
do we really want it? Do we need it? Does it even have to be a thing?
Yeah, like I get we're a good fit. We're a good fit now.
Yeah,
So let's just see. I want to do an Oprah Stedman situation where we don't make it a legal thing and we just see how long we ride this ride. And then it probably will end up until, we die. I'd be okay
perfection.
with that.
And should we have to get married for health insurance because we know how this country operates,
Mm-hmm.
then we I would like for us to live in adjacent townhomes. I would
Yeah.
like walls in between us and
Yeah.
locked doors.
Yeah.
And that's my
Yeah.
prerogative.
I will say I'm going to throw this out there because they go back to San Francisco, which is a place I've spent much time in my life. That's where my parents. That's the
Yeah.
first city my parents lived in when they moved out to California. Every representation of San Francisco always shows the Golden Gate Bridge. That's its biggest known thing, right? It's
Right.
its landmark. So when they were on the Bay Bridge, my heart did soar a little bit because I do love it when movies show the Bay Bridge over the Golden Gate Bridge because the
Mm-hmm.
Bay Bridge doesn't get enough credit. And to see it in its 1997 glory
In
was
the
kind of cool
glory.
too because they've redone the point from Oakland to Treasure Island. That's been
Mm-hmm.
redone, so it looks a little different. And then was it Willie Brown, the mayor, pops in,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, all these things about San Francisco that we may or may not like.
That we may or may not like. I will say this, and this is my most controversial opinion about the movie, and I realize that. I love animals. I am an animal activist. I respect them. I got the message coming from Nope that if we respect the animals, they respect us, and like
Mhm.
fuck around and find out. But when that for real lion and when the for real monkeys and the toucan showed up, I was like, God damn it, I miss having animals on set because CGI sucks.
Yeah, it really can be bad. I've heard though that like it's really hard on set to try and get animals. Even though they're trained, it still can
Well,
be like a very grueling shoot day.
correct. And of course, my one true love, Whitney Cummings, will tell you that anytime an animal is on a set, they are heavily sedated, and that in a form is
Oh,
medical abuse.
that
So,
makes me
like, it
sad.
does make me sad, but I hate CGI. So it was like, God, why am I so happy to see a lion? Like a for real
Like
lion,
a real one.
like a real lion.
Yeah, yeah. I did love how they sort of animated the elephant too, because
Yes.
that was cute, and how he was just like, "This is Shep. Shep
This
is
is
my
Shep, my
puppy," or
dog.
whatever he called it. Yeah,
I
I
love
thought that was
that.
really sweet.
I love that Brother Ape chose to like teach George of the Jungle some things, but didn't at any point go, and one day you should be smart.
Here's the thing that I can't compute, because even when I was reading about the series from the 60s, that's the whole point. George is supposed to speak this way, and that's the whole point.
Yeah,
And Ape is like this educated, and it was voiced by John Cleese, and I fucking love John
I
Cleese.
love John Cleese.
But I was like, at some point, like here's the thing that bothers me. Having raised a human,
Yeah,
he speaks the way that I speak. So if you have an infant that you're in charge of, how does this child grow up to speak like George and you sound like the Queen's English? Like, I don't get it.
I don't know. I don't know. It's a
I
fun little
understand we're supposed to
dynamic.
suspend our disbelief. I get it.
It's a fun dynamic.
It's a fun dynamic, but
Set
it's
up
one of
some
those
great
things where I'm just
comedy.
like, my child does not talk like that around
Well,
me. Like,
and
you
they
know what I
brought,
mean? Like, he speaks the way I do, not necessarily the inflections or anything like that, but fully formed sentences.
listen, George didn't know how to read. George of the Jungle was probably my first brush with the born hot yesterday trope, where it's like the hottie that's real dumb, but they have a heart of gold. So you want to throw all of your romantic hopes onto them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, Ape plays chess.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, like, how could did you, I don't know. I don't know.
I
I
don't
couldn't
know.
suspend my disbelief, Natalie. I'm so sorry.
Well, sucks to be you because there was some comedic gold there.
I mean, there was for sure. Oh, and then the guy, the bigger goon, not the British goon, but the other one. I was like, why does this guy look so familiar? And I
He's the
looked
guy
him.
from Boy Meets World, right? Like one of the bullies.
No, he's from Parker Lewis Can't Lose. And I
Oh,
was like, oh my God, I haven't seen that show in ages. And he hasn't really done anything. He's done like one or two acting jobs here and there. Like, he hasn't been steady in terms of a series regular. Hello, Mario. We're
Mario
glad
has
you're here.
Mario has arrived, and Mario made the point that we would be talking about gorillas during the George of the Jungle movie, which begs me to ask the question, is it now time for me to go into how much I love gorillas?
Is it?
Yeah,
Is it time?
it's time.
Which
Everyone,
live was it where you gave us 20 minutes worth of
it was
gorilla
the
facts?
last
Yeah.
one. Because you know what? You made me watch a show about baseball. And so I made you watch a movie about a hot man hanging out with gorillas. And honestly, the audience will say, what's better? Baseball, Brendan Fraser, and a loincloth. You know? I love gorillas. Gorillas are our closest relative. And when I go to the zoo or watch George of the Jungle or watch movies with actual gorillas, I can see it. And I grew up in the era where a fucking gorilla was like in every movie.
Yeah, that's true.
There
I
was a
feel like
gor-
that's very true.
there was a gorilla or some sort of primate or an orangutan, a chimpanzee in every goddamn movie. We had a red chimpanzee in this movie. What a dream. We had Little Monkey who was getting bullied. What a dream. And I love gorillas. And I think that
A
if we
little
actually
monkey on Friends. Marcel.
Marcel, and I just feel like if we paid attention more to how gorillas behave and we reflected on that, we would learn a little something about our own human nature. Male gorillas teach me a lot about the opposite sex and how their brain actually works. Because if you take out the confusion of gaslighting, because a gorilla can't gaslight you, they
The
don't have the
gorilla.
language to gaslight you. So
Yeah.
the gorilla can't talk to you
Yeah.
about what it fucking is trying to trick you into believing. So you're just watching it and you're like, episode 52 of Tell the Men I've Tolerated Before. That's exactly how that motherfucker treated me. And it's a gorilla.
Yeah.
And had episode 52. By the way, I'm just throwing out random episode numbers of my podcast now. I don't know what man I'm talking about on episode 52, or if it's a guest talking about another man.
I just feel like we should confirm which you have an episode about gaslighting. You keep talking, I'll find it.
Okay. I have a lot. Number
I'll
one,
try. I'll try to find it.
gaslighting is huge, a huge component of To All the Men I've Tolerated Before, because that is exactly how they're allowed to get away with things. Because they tell you that what you are experiencing isn't in fact true.
Well, and Lyle does that to Ursula when she's like, "I remember what you did when the lion was there," and he was like, "What are
Exactly.
you talking about? It was no, like you're remembering it wrong." And you're like, "Is she Lyle? Is she remembering it wrong? Because I saw it the same way she saw it."
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to ask the audience, what have you learned the most from gorillas?
What have you I don't, that's a great question. Okay, so what have I learned from gorillas? Mario, I gaslight everyone. Jake, hey, I don't really talk to people. Mario, you were one of the nicest people I've ever met in my
Mario,
entire
I
life.
number one, you know you don't belong in this club, in the club of
Mario,
gaslighters.
I know. Mario and I did an Academy Awards live. We went to
Uh-huh.
the awards show live at a local theater here in town who does a
Mm-hmm.
party every year. So this is, I don't know, when it was in April, maybe,
Yeah.
I think. He bought me a Ted Lasso bookmark for my birthday, which was like way far away from when we did the Academy Awards. Like that was the like who
So
I can't
cute.
remember shit. I bought a thank you card for somebody who helped me move. I don't know where it is.
Mario, did you just not all men me on my own show? That's bold to not all men me on my own show.
I don't think it was a not all men moment.
But I will just say, like, so this is my gorilla story that made me see it the clearest.
Yes, share please. We're all sitting with bated breath.
I don't know if you all know this, but Hot Mom hates the primate kingdom. She hates gorillas, chimpanzees, monkeys. She thinks they're creepy. She thinks that they're
Oh.
too smart for their own good. I love to send her YouTube videos of monkeys using tools. My sister loves to send her videos of monkeys gathering in groups and formulating a plan and then executing said plan.
But
I'm
how do you
ready.
feel that something is too smart for its own good? Like they're intent like they're meant to be that way.
No, she thinks it's scary. She thinks it's scary that they're that smart. To which I say, I welcome the Planet of the Apes. And I hope that and I keep saying that I love monkeys and
Charleston
apes and
Heston's version
primates.
or James Franco's version?
No,
It's
I'm
Charles
just here for my version where
Oh,
the
okay.
apes take me for listen, I'm done with humans. Like let's give the gorillas a chance. Let's give the gorillas a chance.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And I go public a lot with how much I appreciate them and respect them. And I admire their intelligence because I hope that when the world ends and they get access to YouTube again, the gorillas will be like, we always knew she was cool. Get her out of the pit.
Mark Wahlberg version? Mario, explain yourself. There's a Mark Wahlberg Planet of the Apes?
I think he did one of the most recent ones.
There's a recent Planet of the Apes?
Not like recent, but like, there were other ones after the James Franco one.
There were other ones after the James Franco
Yeah, it
one?
was a whole series of movies.
It was a whole series? Oh my
There was like
god.
4.
What?
Mario says that Mark Wahlberg was in the 2003 one.
What?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry we ruined your viewpoint of the Planet of the Apes.
No, it was before James Franco. That might be because maybe it's just sucked real bad and that's why no one remembers it.
Like the Incredible Hulk with what's his face?
Ryan Reynolds?
No,
Who was
Ryan
the
Reynolds
Incredible
was.
Hulk before Mark Ruffalo?
It was a couple of people. One of
Ryan
them,
Reynolds was Green Lantern.
yeah, one of them was like Eric Bana, but there no Norton. What's his name? Norton.
Ed Norton.
Ed Norton. No one liked that Hulk movie, and we
I
have
just
wiped it from
Yeah,
existence.
because it wasn't good. I just want everyone to know that if they go to all the Eric Bana, okay, Natalie was right. If you go to all the men I've tolerated before in Apple Podcast or wherever you find your podcasts,
Uh-huh.
episode number 52 is in fact bold, loud, and trying to date, which is a good
Which is
episode.
a good one because it's all about how men try to trick me into not being myself, and therefore they shouldn't have to date me, which is a form of gaslighting. So I was
Yeah,
on the right
so it
track.
works. You were on the right path.
I know my show inside and out. Um,
I still can't get over that Mark Wahlberg did it.
so I'm
Anyway,
at I'm at the Columbus Zoo with my mom, and I take her to the gorilla exhibit. She
and
hates
she
all
freaks
monkeys.
out.
She didn't freak out, but on the way there, because like Liz, I don't know if anyone's been to the Columbus Zoo, but it's a fucking hike. You have to spend all day there to see everything
Oh, wow.
from open to close because
You know what?
it's huge.
I love stuff like that though, because there are some places, and I won't say who they are, but there are some places I've been where you pay like $50 to get in,
Yeah,
and then 25 minutes later you're like, I'm done.
done,
Great.
done.
Glad I just paid you 2 hours worth of my salary.
If you're a member of the Patreon, Elizabeth came on for a Patreon episode, and and I will tell you exactly when we got bamboozled like that. um, but that's behind the paywall because that's where we insult people.
Yeah.
But anyways, so my mom the entire time on the way to the gorillas is like, I don't like gorillas. I don't understand why they're making sticks and like using them as tools and like spears or whatever. And I was like, Mom, they're our closest relative. And she's like, I don't like that either. And their like hands look like our hands. And she's complaining. And I get there and I'm like,
Looks like
Mom,
our
look at them.
hands.
They're so majestic because I do feel that like gorillas are very noble, majestic creatures.
And I feel like they would give good hugs.
Yes. Yes.
Like there's such a nurturing side to them too.
Not
Like
in the
that.
male gorillas.
No, but in the female.
Yes. So, as I'm explaining to my mother how gentle and majestic and beautiful and smart and soulful they look,
Mm-hmm.
a male gorilla approaches a female gorilla to like try and flirt with her a little bit, and she screams at him. Well, that gorilla had a male fragility moment, and I'm standing by the glass, and he comes running, screaming, and like hits
Hits it.
right where I'm standing at the glass. And because I've told my mother that I'm not afraid of the gorillas and I understand them, I had to stand there like it didn't startle me. I was like,
Oh my gosh.
okay. So I'm being strong. I'm being #brave. And the male gorilla is going now down the glass, going, ha, 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 because he's pissed that he couldn't get any from the lady gorilla. And then he does a whole lap doing that. And then he goes and pouts in the corner. And I was like, I've seen men do that in bars.
Well, and it's better than him hitting her
Right. He
or
didn't hit
like,
her. He tried to
you
hit
know,
me, but that's fine.
well, he's hitting the glass.
Right.
You know,
And
he
my
knows
mom's like,
it's
what
there.
do you feel about gorillas now? And I go, you know what, Mom? Honestly, I feel like they're a direct reflection on how we behave. I've seen men do that in bars.
Yeah. Truly.
I have seen a man get rejected in a bar, probably from me, go back to his like bros, talk shit about me and scream and pout about how he didn't get laid, and then go brood in a corner, just like sipping a drink, being like, dumb bitch, probably isn't good in bed anyway. She ain't even fucking that hot. And that was the energy the gorilla brought to the
Oh,
zoo that day.
he's mad.
Yeah.
His lady said no.
So that's when I started theorizing. I was like, if we started paying more attention to gorillas, we would understand how we got here.
Yeah, I think that was the whole point of Jane Goodall, right? Like she
Yeah.
was there to understand and sort of translate and be like, guess what, guys? We're all the same.
I remember during whatever King Kong came out when I was a child, and my grandma Peg was still alive, so it was way before I was 16. I remember my dad took us to King Con while we were staying at my grandma Peck's house. I think he took a handful of our cousins too. And I remember coming home still crying. And my grandma went, "What's your problem?" And I went, "It's just that they shot him and they put him down, and like he didn't want to come to New York or date Naomi Watts. Like they went into his house, and then Jack Black went, 'We could make $1.' And then they brought him back, and then they shot him because he wouldn't act right in New York, and then they killed him, and he was just really, he had soulful, kind eyes." And my grandma went, "God damn it, Natalie. You can't get this worked up about a fake gorilla." And it was like, it's just like, it was really hard.
It's capitalism for you.
It's
Look at this.
capitalism and
Look at this freak
colonization.
show. That's what they did in George of the Jungle too with Ape, and they're like, let's take the one that plays chess.
Right. And like, let's talk about the colonization of it all. So then she has to bring George back to San Francisco because Lyle shot him. I gasped out loud when that happened, even though I knew it was happening.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. Like, so they bring in, good on Ursula, because I feel like Ursula removed herself from this expectation that George would all of a sudden just know how to behave in San Francisco. Like she tries to
Right.
like help him out a little bit, like, "Hey, maybe we don't scream, the neighbors won't like that." But she's not like yelling. She's not
Right.
like cruel. She's not even like making fun of him. She's like, I brought home George from the jungle. Okay? I brought home
Yeah.
the king of the jungle, and he's gonna scream. But I got misty eyed when he said something when they're first on like his little balcony, her little balcony, and
Uh-huh.
they're talking about like Tukey and all of them, and she goes, "Do you miss them?" And he goes, "Yeah, George missed them a lot." I was like, "Oh my god, George! He didn't want to be in San Francisco."
No. He sure did
He
not.
sure didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually kind of take issue with him being considered the king of the jungle because I feel like that is again rooted in colonizer
Yeah,
because a white man's going to be the king of a continent that he does not inhabit. But I guess George does cuz he was like
he was dropped there.
stranded there from a
Did you not watch the
plane crash or
cartoon?
whatever. Huh?
Did you not watch the cartoon? It set
I
it
did
up for
watch
you
the
at the very
cartoon, I
beginning.
did, but it's still one of those things where you're just like, "Okay."
Yeah, and
Like,
I also
I mean,
didn't.
it's whatever, it is what it is, but it's like, he can't be the king of the jungle.
And
There's,
then I
like,
was like,
there's tribes all over the continent of Africa who have, like, mastered the art of living there for, like, millennia.
well, and then I didn't understand if it was like a hierarchical thing because like he tamed the lion and the lion
Mhm.
is the king of the jungle. I was like, is that it? I laughed
So he's, like,
so
the king
hard
of
during
the
that lion fight scene.
Oh,
Like I
yeah,
was just
yeah,
giggling.
yeah. So he's, like, the king of the jungle in terms of, like, the animal kingdom?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Because
Okay.
you have to remember that like when they talked about him, because Lyle asked or the poachers asked, like
Yeah, the white
the
gorilla.
the guys like either thought he was like some sort of very rare albino gorilla, or like he was a legend and a myth. It would be
Mhm.
like Sasquatch being king of the forest.
Yeah, and they do compare it to Sasquatch in the film. I don't know, I guess I just don't really like
that
oh
it
no.
that then it
Give me
ended
a
up he was a
story
real
about black
person.
people on the continent of Africa thriving.
They did, we got one.
I
Viola
know.
Davis is in
I
it.
know the women, what is it called?
Women of Catway?
The
No.
Women Kingdom or something like that? Woman King? Woman King.
Woman King?
Which I still need to buy my tickets to go see. I was busy.
Yeah.
I had stuff all weekend, so
The
now I'm like,
literal fight choreography in that fucking movie is going to blow my mind, and I'm going to have such a sexual response to it. And I'm just letting everyone know now. Like,
from George of the Jungle?
well, yes, I already had my own sexual response to George of the Jungle. No, the King Queens, the Queen of the King, the
Oh
Viola
yeah,
Davis
the Woman
movie,
King.
the
Yeah,
Woman
yeah,
King,
yeah.
because like
I'm gonna have to emotionally prepare for that one because the trailer always made me cry because it's like we know what happens in real life. It's like things about the Holocaust too, where I'm just like, we all know that you don't need to get on that train. Like, don't get on the train. Don't get on the train. We know what happens. Like,
Don't get on the train. I love Shep. He's one of my favorite characters of the whole movie. And I have elephants all over this house because, once again, I have made up my own Natalie Katona folklore where they symbolize good luck.
I love that. I think elephants are lucky in some
Well,
cultures,
what
aren't
did I
they?
tell you last week was good luck? A frog by your door or something? And then I was like, I
Yeah,
think I made
yeah,
that up. If you find a frog by your door, you're going to have a lucky day. I go, I literally just make up fucking folklore about
yeah.
animals.
Yeah, but I do think elephants are lucky. I don't remember which culture, but I'm pretty sure they are in
I have
certain
elephants
cultures.
all over this house. I love elephants. I
Yeah.
one time in San Diego, I got to ride an elephant and my sister almost pushed me off of it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was like 3 or 4 and we were in California visiting my grandpa and my dad's side of the family, and both of my sister and I are afraid of heights.
Mm.
Like, and
Elephants are
so
tall.
what ended up happening is my dad refused to ride the elephant. So then there's only one parent on the elephant. So that means that one of us gets to be held by said parent, and the
Yeah.
other one is like in front of the one who's being held by said parent, which means that I didn't get to hold the bar or my mother. And when the elephant started to move, my sister grabbed me real quick, and the shot, like me jostling myself because I got startled, and the whole like balancing yourself on the elephant, like I have a sense memory of me like
Tipping.
truly trying to tip.
Oh my God.
And everyone tells me that that's not true. Like
What?
they're like, Namely, like, that's not what happened. You got startled and you probably felt like you were falling. And I go, and to a 4-year old, that means I almost fell off the elephant.
Right, right, right. Like, don't minimize my feelings. It's okay to
Right.
explain what really happened,
Right.
but like, don't minimize the fact that it felt like I was falling. That's so lame. I wouldn't mind, like, well, I actually have a issue with safaris. Like, that's a hard.
No. Yeah. I wouldn't go to the San Diego Zoo and ride the elephants today because, again, I have drunk drove a camel before at the Renaissance Fest.
There, why camels at the Renaissance
You
Fest?
know, there
Does
was a
that seem
camel.
does that seem like an out of place thing?
You know, we love camel rides here in Ohio. We have them at like
So any chance you
any
can get to
excuse
have
to
a
get a
camel,
camel
even
out
though
there.
like and during the Renaissance era, it's probably not a thing.
I don't know, but I drunk drove, like, you're like on that like little circle, and I'm
Yeah,
just like, look
yeah.
at me.
And the camel was okay with it?
I always make sure to pay my homage to the animal that just got suckered by capitalism.
You know, I actually wouldn't mind. I would love to do see, I need to learn, I need to do better. I would love to like do because I told you, did I tell you that we figured out that we my dad's side of the family is from the Democratic Republic of the
Hmm.
Congo. Thank you, DNA tests. So I wouldn't mind going to see like kind of what the culture's like now. I have a friend who was born and lived there for 7 years.
Hmm.
And he's, very proud or whatever being Congolese. And I was like, I'm just so curious what that looks like and like what that would be like. And I guess at the end of the day, like movies like George of the Jungle, they're fun or whatever. But at the same time, like it kind of makes me feel like I would like to see I would like to see a movie that doesn't demonstrate Africa as being because
As
we
through
don't.
the white lens,
Mhm.
like Keenan I does basically Thailand through the
Yeah.
white lens.
Yeah.
Which,
Because,
congrats
they
to,
give this perception of like everyone still lives in huts. I'm pretty sure that's not true.
no.
But find something that disputes that without having to go to a news site that is still sort of reporting in a way that every country in Africa is third world or underdeveloped. And it's like, well, it's
Hmm.
underdeveloped because of colonization. Like it's
Right.
not
Because
underdeveloped. You stole all the
you
resources.
stole
I
all
mean,
of the
like for
land.
crying out loud, the conversation about the queen's crown, for Christ's sake, like that's all stolen jewels. Like,
Give
mhm.
it back. I hope that Elizabeth gave it back in her will, but I bet you she didn't.
It was propped up on her coffin today during the
It was
funeral.
propped up on her fucking
As
coffin.
as protocol, like that's protocol for state funerals. But with that said, it's like now the question becomes like the countries where those gems are from are
Mm-hmm.
demanding them back, and
As they
rightfully
should.
so, because they have been under resourced because you stole all their resources.
No. Yes. I do feel like, especially when we were growing up as children, the only time we got to see the continent of Africa is when white people would go and visit Africa and make their white people judgments.
Yeah, so I several times, I don't know if you've read it, but I've had to read The Heart of Darkness several times
Mm-hmm.
to the point where I never want to read that book again. Stop making it required reading for
Stop
English
it.
programs. And it's basically about this guy's travels through Africa, and it's hard to read because he's referring to everybody in really derogatory ways, and it's just it makes every I don't know, it's not a good it
Representation.
it's reaffirming really crappy ideology that
Right.
non-POCs have towards the continent of Africa.
Correct.
So I'm like, can we stop? Because you're
Can we
not
stop?
hiring teachers who can shepherd a conversation that says, "Hey, this description is through the white lens, and it's actually probably not super accurate. It's based on his
Right.
experience. It's based on what he believes coming from where he's from in England as
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, a baron or some shit. I forget what he was. So no one's having that conversation. They're just saying, read this. And then it's like, I ran into some savages who gave me
Ew.
ivory. And you're just like, okay.
They didn't give you ivory. You killed an elephant to get that ivory.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking poachers.
Yep. Now that I've killed the mood.
You have killed the moon on my. I just wanted
I'm
a thirst trap movie
sorry.
about Brendan Fraser. I'm not watching Encino Man now because
You
you killed
it's
my mood.
you can do whatever you want. I'm not mad at George of the Jungle. I'm not mad at Brendan Fraser. I really want to make sure that you understand that because
No one is
he
mad
is
at Brendan Fraser.
very
He's
good looking
perfect.
in this movie and
He's
he's
a sweet baby
adorable.
angel that's never done anything wrong. This show was supposed to celebrate him and his good fortune.
Yeah, and he just I love how he looks at Leslie Mann. I just think he does such a great job
He,
of being like this big lovable lug.
the thing about like Brendan Fraser is that like you can tell from the energy that he brings to the screen that he is a very empathetic and loving person, and that
Yeah.
like you would be lucky to get a hug from Brendan
Yeah.
Fraser.
Yeah.
Like at no point, because you know, like when people walk onto the movie and I'm like, that's a bad man. And I'm always like 5 years ahead of when the news story is going to come out that they're a bad man. I'm like, that's a bad man. Never. Not one time with Brendan Fraser. He is a sweet baby angel. He is perfect. And I feel like that's why I love George of the Jungle, because George of the Jungle, it's like if you rip away everything about Brendan Fraser and how our society shaped him, like he's just like a very empathetic, loving, kind person. And it's like, well, imagine if we were all just left to be kind people without capitalism
Mhm.
or um prejudice or anything.
Mhm.
Like I
Mhm.
love the dance thing. For one thing, when did we decide that fucking dancing was embarrassing?
I
Like
don't know.
when
That's a good question. All the
like
movies in the 90s have a good dance scene.
well, and then like, but like that's a huge thing among. I feel like our culture is that like number one, like dance used to be like the only way you got to socialize is
Mhm.
like through taking off your glove and touching someone's naked hand with your naked hand and dancing in a room in front of
Mhm.
what like rich people.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden, like George is like, "Oh, it's dance time," and Leslie Mann goes, "I don't dance." I yelled at the TV. I was like, "The man said it's dance time,"
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then he just tells her. He looks at her. He's like, George don't feel stupid. George knows it'll all work out. I was like, my God, George of the Jungle, philosopher for the ages.
Right,
maybe,
right.
maybe if we all just stop trying to make everything as miserable as it can be. And I feel that when they go to San Francisco. Like when
Mhm.
George is walking around San Francisco, I go, look at it, George. They have made everything as miserable as it could possibly be.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting too about it when they land in San Francisco, because it definitely has that fish out of water feel, which is
Yeah,
totally intentional. But you get the sense of, dad, like Leslie Mann's dad just doesn't care about what society is going to think or say.
right.
And what that actually, and then the way, like, it kind of, well, first of all, I hate the way that rich women are portrayed in media. Like, that's a
Yeah.
thing, because I feel like they're all portrayed like Holland Taylor, right? Like, you're uptight, stuffy, have to be in society, perfectness. And okay, sure, that's a true trope. With that said, it's, if, like you were saying, if we all sort of stopped putting on this facade.
Yeah.
I watched Do Revenge over the weekend.
Hmm.
It's a new one on Netflix. It's a high school film. And the guy who's complete, actually, Natalie, you should watch it, because I think
Hmm.
you're gonna hate the leading man so hard,
I
and I
always
would
do.
love to hear your thoughts.
I
Um,
always do.
but he basically is like, I don't want to be in this position. I have to be in this position. And you're like, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
You don't. You're continuing to choose to put up with, to be in this position because you think
Well,
you have to, but you could totally break away. Like,
I think
whatever
Leslie.
pressures you're feeling are true and real. Like, that's a thing that exists, right? Because your parents pressure you to do all these things. You don't realize who you are, da da da. But at the end of the day, it's like, find your fucking cojones and get the fuck
Hmm.
out.
And I think what the beautiful part of Ursula's story is we so many of us have that aha moment. Like the moment that
Mhm.
you take us out of our normal situation and our normal set of rules and expectations, and then you put us somewhere else, you're like, you mean I don't have to give a fuck about my dad's company if I don't want to give a fuck about his company? Zach
And
Efron had it right before the quarantine on his Down to Earth with Zach Efron
yeah,
show.
and it's genuine and honest,
Yeah.
whereas the kid in Do Revenge, it's not genuine. He's just
Hmm.
saying that because he has to say that,
Yeah.
because I think he likes perpetuating in that
Yeah.
way. Whereas Leslie Mann's character is like, oh, there's other ways to
There,
live, and I
yeah.
want to understand how I want to live.
And each different way to live in some part has its own beauty.
Yeah.
And if it works for you, then that is beautiful.
Yeah.
There was no way
100%.
there was no way that San Francisco was going to work for George. Tuki
Mm-mm.
Tuki couldn't get there.
Tuki Tuki
He
got there.
he did though.
Yeah,
We
he
love
figured it
Tuki
out.
Tuki.
It took him, I
Um
mean, it probably took him 4 years, but he did it.
so I feel like movies like George of the Jungle contributed to me not having a natural fear of animals at all at one moment. Not one part of my body is ever afraid of an animal, which
Oh,
is
that's
like,
good.
is it? How have I not become one of those idiots that tries to, like, how have I not tried to pet a wolf at the zoo because it was right there?
Aren't they behind a cage? Isn't it really hard to
Listen,
get to them?
every year we have stories upon stories of some idiot thinking that, well, I'll just climb over the wall and like pet the wolf. It's a dog. Or
I can't imagine you climbing over the
no,
wall to do
I
that.
did.
That's why
I,
you haven't had an
right, because I
issue.
don't have the upper body strength to climb over the wall. I did try to pet the buffalo at the Fort Wayne Zoo because his
No.
fluffy head was right
No.
there.
You're those people I had to write PSAs about,
Yeah,
or not
right.
me specifically, but my counterparts in other
And when I tell
states.
you that I didn't even realize I was doing it, like,
Mm,
so at the Fort Wayne Zoo, and I don't know if this is how it was because this was probably like 10 years ago. The buffaloes sit in a recessed pit almost.
okay.
And so you're above them, but you're
Mhm.
above them in the way that because this is the first time I realized that buffaloes are this tall. So because buffaloes are so tall,
Yeah,
you're kind of like eye level with them, which is a kind of like a weird perspective to be at. So they're
sure.
recessed just enough to where like you're eye level with them. You know, the buffalo's like fluffy head was just like right there. And all of a sudden, with no volition of my own, my whole body just started to dip forward. And my boyfriend at the time grabbed my wrist and went, the fuck are you doing? And I went, I honestly don't know. It was so
Oh my
fluffy and it was
gosh.
right there. And I have no natural fear of animals.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
blame movies like George of the Jungle and all of the other movies where some big lovable oaf is just like rolling around with animals. Because him talking through that monkey getting bullying and him just talking to the monkey like the monkey can understand him and he can understand the monkey, that's how I talk to the animals at the zoo.
Yeah.
And in Columbus, they post the names of all of the animals in the exhibit. So I use their names and then I have a conversation with them like we're having a tea party. I'm like, what's going on, Buttercup? You're my favorite orangutan. What's been going on today? What's been going
See,
on
and
today?
I don't subscribe to the idea that they don't understand you. You know what I mean? Like I think
Right.
that it's like when you're talking to kids who don't fully form sentences
Mm-hmm.
yet. It's the same thing. That's how I see it.
Right.
Um
I've also been told by other people, not me. I did not make this up. Okay, this was said to me one day while we were at the zoo. I have been told that the animals respond to my voice and like it's gotten to the point where some of the animals recognize me
mm,
as a gentle George of the Jungle soul and
yeah.
they make their way towards me. Like, and baby hippo Fiona, abandoned famous baby hippo Fiona from the Cincinnati Zoo, when she was very little and first like brought into the public, I went to see her and she was hiding behind Bibby, her mom, and you could just see her little
Aw.
legs in the water just
Yeah.
propelling her fat little chubby body forward. But when they made a turn, she made eye contact with me. And then I had like this flip book moment because I just got out my phone and I was like, no one's going to fucking believe this. And I got it and I just shot. And I just kept like pressing the shutter button. And I have like this cool, like little flip moment of her like tilting her head because she sees me, kind of like looking at Bibby and then being like, I gotta say hi to Natalie. Heard she's my girl.
Cute. I love
And
that.
my friend at the time was like, I was following Bibby. And in my core, I knew stand next to Nambly. Nambly's going to be the only one who gets to see Fiona today. And sure as shit, as soon as her feet disappeared, because you could see them under the dip of Bibby's
Mhm.
stomach, I
Mhm.
was like, where's Fiona? And she was beelining towards you. And I went, fuck me. I knew it. And one time at the free zoo in Chicago, Lincoln Park Zoo, I got the polar bear to use his head to mimic my hand motions.
Aw.
I and again, it was something that I was doing unconsciously. Like I
Yeah.
waved and he followed my hand, and then I waved again and he went for it, and then we like did a couple tricks together. And I
Aw.
remember like some dad of some other group of kids, because I was little, looked at me and then kind of like looked at the polar bear. Again, I was told that I was a liar on the car ride home when I was like, did everyone see the polar bear do what I wanted him to do?
Mm.
When I was on Date and Love is Blind. And I think that this is one of the coolest things about me because I grew up watching George of the Jungle and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I have a George of the Jungle soul. Animals know that they are safe with me, and animals have kind of always known that they like I'm a safe space. When I was on Date and Love is Blind and I'm like bragging about myself that I can make innate like connections with like zoo animals, one of the guys after the whole stupid experiment told me that like that was a deterrent. He's like, I couldn't
Oh.
like get over that and that you thought that that was cool. And that's why I like gorillas and not
Interesting.
gaslighters.
Why would he think that it's an appropriate thing to say, like, "I'm not gonna date you because that factoid I found weird." Like, who
Right.
gives a shit, sir? Who gives a shit? It's interesting because I think that,
We all watched Dr. Doolittle and we wanted to be able to understand the animals.
yeah, I was gonna say, because you always talk about how hot moms sort of deterred you from working with animals, but maybe now in your life you should rediscover that passion and love and figure it out.
I know. I know. The things that I could have done, I would 100% throw my life away for a moron in the jungle who like knew how to talk to the animals and be
Yeah.
chill with them.
Brendan Fraser, can you hear her?
100% would throw, if I was on some sort of tour. I don't like safaris because I feel like safaris somehow make animals too comfortable with people and then the poachers like get a leg up in the game.
Well, safaris are they're actually people shouldn't do them.
No.
They're a it's a whole thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
the money that you pay for the safari doesn't actually go back to like any of the um it's not they're just not good. They
Yeah.
don't put the money back into the community and they don't care for like they're not good. People shouldn't do them.
No. So stop it. Or
Yeah.
else I'm calling Whitney Cummings on you.
Or at
Um,
least I don't know if things have changed, but in the last 20 years, but my understanding was that safaris were kind of like essentially stolen land so
yeah,
these things could happen. So these like travel agencies could host these things for essentially rich white
forest.
people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and don't swim with the dolphins at Dolphin Cove. Like Blackfish told us what that was all about. Don't
Yeah.
go to SeaWorld. In
Yeah.
fact, just don't.
Are there still Sea Worlds? I didn't think that they was this still a thing. I
No, I think
mean,
Florida still has SeaWorld.
well, Florida.
I I when I was a child and had no volition on where I could and could not be, went to the Idaho SeaWorld. Like there was a SeaWorld in Idaho. How the fuck
That's
does that
so
make sense?
random.
Or it was Iowa. It was one of the I states.
Oh, interesting.
And I was sad the entire time there.
Was it at least near a body of water?
No, it wasn't by a body of water. I
Because at
was
least the one
sad
in
the
San
entire
Diego,
time.
you're kind of like, okay, like we get it. Like you're
Yeah.
by an ocean.
Yeah.
Still probably shouldn't be here.
No.
Those orcas don't like being in captivity, guys.
They're too big.
Yeah.
I know. It's one of those things where I don't know if I should be icky for how much I love zoos. Because I feel
Well, and I
like,
think that zoos are changing, and
yes,
over the last, honestly, within the last 20 years, we've seen a lot of changes happening, and zoos are becoming more sanctuaries and less capitalistic.
yeah. Um, I love zoos because I feel like zoos are the only way that some people learn how to be empathetic towards animals.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting. So we went to the Seattle Zoo one year, and my son was, I don't know, maybe 4,
Mhm.
and the when we were where the rhinos were, the guy who was like the info person, he was from some country in Africa, I can't recall. And it's like, oh my gosh, these rhinoceros, blah blah, all these things. And he's like, it's like, oh, there's like, why is it so like, why is the where they are like, why is it
Yeah.
designed this way? And he's like, rhinos like to knock over humans for sport.
And honestly,
I was like,
I
that is the best fucking fact I've heard today, because
I
that
think
sounds awful, but why do I want to see it now?
I had a friend tell me that after they did a behind the scenes tour of a zoo, that one of the zookeepers said that it is always completely on the rhinos' terms on whether or not they can actually be held captive because we don't actually have anything that's
Mhm.
like stable enough to keep a rhino captive
Yeah,
if
because
it wanted to charge.
the way they charge, it's a
Yeah.
lot. Like they're a
Mhm.
force to be fucking reckoned with.
Mhm.
And so, if anybody has a chance to go to the Seattle Zoo, it's actually pretty cool. You feel like you're in. I mean, like Natalie mentioned earlier, zoos
Yeah.
have adopted this model of feeling like you're in nature and da da da. But it's outdoors, which is hilarious because Seattle does rain a lot. But it was a lot of fun. We had a really good time. It was really everyone was super informed about the animals. And I think
Yeah.
that's the best part, like you said, because then you get real information, things I didn't learn in science class in 4th grade.
Well, and I am a very strong component of you can't have empathy for like things that you're not like you can't truly understand something until you're experiencing it. So
Right.
you can say things like I hear you and I'm so sorry that that's your situation and you can like conceptualize a lion in your head. But and I don't know if this is like my undiagnosed like it's like object permanence issues with me. Like it's like I can conceptualize what a lion is, but until I sit in front of lion, it is not real.
Like, did you even with like National Geographic, like on PBS, they always had those animal shows for kids. Did you ever watch those?
Yeah, I think I was like a Zumba Fu kid, and like, I don't know, I watched a lot of X-Men. But I truly feel like going to zoos and actually learning and like going to those zoo shows and all of it and actually learn. However, I will say that Glennon Doyle fucked me up about zoos and in the prologue to Untamed.
Oh, I haven't read Untamed.
Oh my God. So Untamed starts with this, she's at a zoo and she's watching the cheetah run. And it's how she conceptualized the book because she was watching this cheetah run for a ratty bunny toy with his companion dog, because sometimes they'll, like the Columbus Zoo does this where they pair a litter of cheetahs with a litter of puppies, and
Oh.
then they bring up the dog and the cheetahs together, and then they do like training together, and that's how they train the cheetah.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. So they had done this at whatever zoo Glennon Doyle is at, and she's watching the cheetah be chased by a dog chasing a stuffed animal, and she went, all I can, and her, I think one of her kids said something like, that cheetah feels so tamed or something, and she just like burst into tears because she realized
Mm.
that cheetah shouldn't be chasing a stuffed animal. It should be allowed to be untamed and chasing a wildebeest in the like savannah, but we've ruined
Right.
the savannah, so it's not even safe for said cheetah. And she said that that's what we do to women.
Yeah.
She's like, and then that's when it hit me that that's what we do to women. We make their oppression so comfortable, they don't have a leg to stand on when they go, I would like to be wild.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm listening to Glennon tell me this lovely story on audiobook in the car because I save my audiobooks for road trips. And when I tell you I've never cried harder to have it like put out on the line for me that like we made the animals' homes unsafe.
Right.
And then we brought them here. And then we forced them to act like we felt like they should act to make us feel safe.
Yeah.
And then that's what we do to women.
Yeah.
And then she wrote an entire book, and each chapter is a different chapter on how they tamed us.
Mm.
And we should be wild like cheetahs.
I'll have to read it. I didn't read it because somebody that I do not respect their literary choices said it was really good. So it's like, well, I'm not gonna read that book then.
I I shied away from Glennon Doyle and Brene Brown for a while because they were so trendy. And usually when I'm like, well, if you're that trendy, you're full of bullshit.
Right.
And then I listened to Untamed, and Glennon Doyle is another one of those people that because of what she's lived through in life, she is also very empathetic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Brene Brown comes off as a very empathetic person. So they eventually won me back, and now I am a basic white lady who is obsessed.
Yeah, I think I really actually love the work that Brene Brown was doing around shame. Like I think that's so
Mm-hmm.
fascinating.
Yeah,
And I think human behavior is fascinating. I find it very interesting what causes certain things to happen within us, you know. Like that TV show Snapped was
yeah,
had to stop watching it because the way that they were framing some of the stories about like these women who lose their shit because they've basically been bullied by whomever they
yeah,
snapped on. It kind of was like, why are we saying the story in this way when the truth is they're being harassed, they're
yeah.
being bullied, and you're not leading with it. You're leading with them as being the bad guy, not the victim. Not that I'm saying we should all say, like, oh, I'm a victim and that's the label we should lean into.
No,
But there
but
is a point where it's like we're all capable of doing something that is out of character if we're pushed in the right way. And some humans can push each other in ways that maybe they shouldn't be in the same room together.
well, and if you take it back from the true crime aspect of it all, like Ursula was conditioned to find that dancing was probably a sexual act and therefore she shouldn't be doing it in
Mhm.
like just a place of like pure joy and music and whatever. I remember carrying that idea that like, oh, like no one wants to watch it, like especially like plus size girls, like no one wants to watch you dance or whatever. I love to dance and I love to sing. We know this to be true.
Yeah, yeah.
But so like that's one way that the society that Ursula grew up in tamed her.
Mm-hmm.
Because what
Which is
dance
actually
is,
really interesting to me because if she's San Francisco society, she would have had a cotillion, she would have had a coming out, and she would have had to have done all the training in dancing, and all the trainings in ballroom dancing and all the things in order to do that because that's the one acceptable way to perform.
so then it's like, well, you can dance, but you can only dance within our parameters. And
Yeah.
George was asking her to dance out of joy and
Mm-hmm.
because it was dancing time.
Yeah.
Um, and it's the same with me and my empathy towards animals. When people are like, that's odd, stop telling people that. I'm like, it's another way to tame me because I feel very powerful when I make that connection with animals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, look at me. I have a power that not everyone has.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
not
And I,
everyone.
as to
I
say, and I
like,
think that we all have different powers in that way. And when we don't understand, when someone doesn't understand your power, that's when they
yeah,
start to make you feel bad, and all the negative things come about.
yeah,
But that's another, like, that's just a way to create a way to, what am I trying to say? It doesn't breed harmony. That's what I'm trying to
right.
say.
And all of the cliches and gross things we say about women who are women of color,
Mm-hmm.
that's another way to tame them and make them more comfortable for the people in power.
Yeah, I was actually the last night on Instagram I went on to my close friends club and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I started a budget. I've never been in charge of my finances before in this way because it's always
Mm-hmm.
been survival and my career opportunities aren't the same and da da da. And I ended it basically with, cuz it's really scary being a single income when you have dependents. Granted, my child's in college.
But
However, my
still,
income still impacts his ability to finance for school, and you're a person of color and society continues to remind you that they hate Black women. Like, it's scary when you're like, I would like to earn a living that is more than just all my bills are paid. I'd like to buy food. I'd like to
yeah.
have some clothes. And society continues to remind you that they hate Black women.
Well, and then like within my life, it was you couldn't have given that guy another shot. He was putting in like he took you out to coffee. So like they get a pass because they did the bare minimum. And then I should tame down my expectation or my personality or whatever to be more palpable. I put an extra consonant into that word.
Palatable.
Yeah. To them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm tired of that game.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather wake up every day in the like ferocious jungle with George than spend one more day trying to figure out taxes.
Which are intentionally hard anyway.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because on the one hand, we're constantly having this conversation of, and millennials are of the generation where it's like we don't see color because that was supposed to be the
Ugh.
great equalizer. That was
Right.
supposed to make everyone the same so we don't have these issues. But turns out that was actually really bad. So now
Because
we're in
it
the
still demonizes color.
Mhm. And so now we're in this phase of like, everyone's different and let's celebrate it. But the hurdle there is that you don't want to celebrate everyone's differences.
No.
Like, people still feel isolated, people still feel alone, people still feel forced to make decisions that they don't fully want to make. Like
Mm-hmm.
that, we're not really doing that great of a job
Yeah.
at making it better for anybody when we're still sort of perpetuating these expectations and making these decisions based on archaic ideals.
Yeah. I it's one of those things where like Untamed fucked me up. And then like on top of Untamed, I got onto the side of TikTok where it was white women who try to be intersectional feminists explaining to other white women who aren't intersectional feminists about why we're bad at it. And it's because we have also been conditioned and tamed to accept our own oppression and to think that through that oppression and the way that men treat us, we will be successful if we just wait it out or bear down on it or circumvent it or fix it before it even happens.
Or play into it. Like, I've
Yeah.
run into a lot of women who still buy into that idea that, they haven't sort of let the clutches of the patriarchy and capitalism let them, still hold
Yeah.
on to them. And then you have these conversations with them and it's like, "Oh, that's really sweet that you think that hard work still pays off." Like, I've been working hard for 20 fucking years and my student loan debt is still more than my income. So what am I doing wrong?
What am I
Like,
doing
and it's
wrong? You
become
gave me
so
these rules.
you
I
gave me
played
the
by the
rules, I
rules.
played by the rules, and it didn't work out for me, but for some reason, when it worked out for you, there's something wrong with me? Yeah, I'm gonna tell
Right.
you what's wrong with me, it's because 'cause I'm a Black woman. I'm a biracial woman, and I'm not like, that's what's wrong, quote, "wrong with
Yeah.
me," and not being able to, like, move forward because of all of I did everything, but
Hmm.
I'm not the right kind of Black person, though I'm light enough that one could argue I've gotten further than some of my sisters. But it's still like, it's still one of those things where when I meet women who are still in those clutches, I'm just like, "Oh man, girl, I really want you to be free. Like, how do you still buy into this?" Like, because they're constantly feeding them that carrot, giving them just enough to move
Yeah.
forward so it feels like there's progress and it feels like it's beneficial, and then it's not really in the end.
I do want to touch on one more serious thing that like makes me cry when I try to conceptualize it, but it's the where Brendan Fraser went for years on end. And it's hard liking George of the Jungle
Mhm.
now because you know that a lot of the stunts in George of the Jungle and The Mummy injured him,
Mhm.
and then he was forced to ignore those injuries to continue his movie career, and then it affected his career and affected his body and had long-term effects that we now shame him for.
Mhm.
And then there's the fact of it all that Brendan Fraser also did what a lot of us have been told not to do. And he came forward with allegations about his own abuse in Hollywood and his
Mhm.
own sexual assault in Hollywood. And then everyone kind of just wanted to demonize him and make him go away. And so it's hard looking back at these movies with because if I ever stood in front of Brendan Fraser, the compliment I would want to pose to him is like, "Hey, thanks for making my childhood fucking cool. Thanks for
Mhm.
like showing me that like empathy and connecting with the animal kingdom and like wanting to be a person who furthers their safety and their enjoyment is actually what we should be doing. And also thanks for the mummy. It's a
Yeah.
fun bop."
Yeah.
But if it's still a point of contention with him where he became such a he was a sex symbol, but for me he was also like a joy symbol,
Mhm.
and it comes through a lot in George of the Jungle. I hate thinking that this empathetic, loving, goofy person had to go through that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was looking at his IMDb and he has a lot of voice work,
Yeah.
um, over the years, and I thought that was really interesting. I don't really know a lot about his time in Hollywood. I just remember him strongly from the 90s,
Hmm.
because like I said, Encino Man. But also other movies too, like, oh my gosh, now they're all escaping me. The ones from the 90s that are
Bedazzled. I
but
loved Bedazzled
yeah,
with
Bedazzled was
Elizabeth
good.
Hurley.
Yeah, Bedazzled was good. Of course, he was uncredited in Now and Then, and we loved him in that, and
Yeah.
just several other things that he was in that we just loved him in, and it was one of those things because my teen years started in the 90s, but started
Hmm.
in the late 90s that he wasn't somebody that sort of stuck with me in the way that
Yeah.
like Heath Ledger did.
Oh my God. I can't see
Sorry.
Matilda Ledger. When they do updates on Matilda Ledger on like, you know,
Mhm.
publications or whatever, I weep because she looks so much like him.
Yeah, and that was a different sort of relationship with a celebrity for me because I saw 10 Things About I Hate About You at the age of 15.
Hmm.
So I'm in high school and I'm seeing this cute sort of bad boy who like converts the bad girl, but they're bad together kind of
Yeah.
vibe. And like, so that kind, so I entered into this phase of like teen heartthrobs, whereas, I didn't see, because I didn't see Encino Man until I was probably old enough because my parents
Yeah.
had a hard, fast rule about no PG-13 movies until you're 13.
Jesus.
So I didn't see George of the Jungle. Like I probably watched it with my cousin who's
Uh-huh.
3 years younger than me, but I probably wasn't paying attention to it in the way that you were paying attention to it
Yeah.
when we were kids.
So yeah, one of the things that I hope, so I did cry.
Yeah.
Um, when Brendan Fraser looked at Leslie Mann during the wedding and he just had like that look and it was so lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were really sweet together. And you know what's
Yeah.
interesting too is I was like, has Leslie Mann ever had a conversation? Do people ever ask her about, because when you have a movie with somebody and people really
Yeah.
enjoy it, like it gets asked about forever and ever and ever. So I wondered what that movie was for Leslie Mann and why doesn't Brendan Fraser come up?
Literally, I don't understand why Leslie Mann doesn't get more play in Hollywood. I would
She
watch
works.
Leslie Mann. She
She's
works a lot, but
yeah,
she
she's
doesn't.
consistent.
She's consistently working, but she's consistently working in that way that like Anna Faris is consistently working, where they give her a leading role once every 10 years. And then
I I
when
think
Judd
she's
Apatow's movie production company came to be, she
stop it,
got more
Josephine.
leading roles because, she had an in.
She's got like one to well, in 2011 she had like three. Josephine. She's consistent. I mean, she's had a couple, several leading roles.
I just like, when I saw her as Ursula, I was like, I want to see Leslie Mann in all the movies. I want to
I'm
see
trying to
her.
think. Okay, so the most recent thing I saw her in, I haven't seen any of these things since. So 2016 is the last movie. How to Be Single. That's the last movie that I
Yeah.
saw.
That was an ensemble cast movie where
Yeah.
everyone kind of played the same role.
Yeah. And then from there, I haven't seen anything. Oh, yeah, I didn't go see Blockers because that looks stupid.
Oh, I loved Blockers. Listen, put John Cena in anything, and you'll find my ass in a chair,
Oh, that's
like with
funny.
my popcorn. I
Yeah.
love that we've turned John Cena into an actor, and he's like the goofier, dumber The Rock.
Right. And yeah. And yeah, Dummers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bless his
I
heart. Bless
No,
his
as
heart.
soon as Blockers came out, because I also like that goofy guy from the Mindy Project. So
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
John Cena and the goofy guy from the Mindy Project, I am sold.
Yeah. That's funny.
But yeah,
Oh, yeah. Ike Barowitz. He's funny.
she does a lot where there is an ensemble cast or where women aren't really the forefront. She wasn't in This Is 40, was she? She wasn't the mom in This Is
Yeah.
40.
She's in This Is 40.
And
That whole
she,
movie is about her.
yeah. So that's the last one that I remember being about her.
The other woman, but I mean, she started it with Cameron Diaz and Kate Upton. And I actually think it doesn't get enough credit
Well,
because there's a lot of strength and power. And like she
yeah.
has such, like her character. I mean, she kind of plays characters that are kind of the same. I don't know about Blockers, but in the things I've seen her in, like got a very specific style and type.
Mm-hmm.
And what was nice about seeing her in The Other Woman is that she kind of starts out in an exaggerated version of what we
Mm-hmm.
know her to be and grows into this very strong woman who's like, you can't fuck with me. And that
Yeah.
was such a great growth to watch. I watched it on Saturday. It's like, I feel like watching The Other Woman. I need some female empowerment shit. Of course, the movie's about, three rich white women, but whatever.
Yeah. So at the end of the show, I would like to remind Brendan Fraser and Brendan Fraser alone that I hope he gets to smile like that every day. And not in like the sad, like I'm so shocked that everyone loved the whale way that has been making me cry for weeks.
Yeah.
But in the I am purely happy. I have let go of anything and everything that would have held me back from being happy. And it's that empathetic, loving, caring smile.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
eventually turned into a smirk that also made me feel something in my downtown.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and that that scene with the horses,
Oh my god, that scene was so good.
that scene with the horses is what sexual fantasies are supposed to be like.
And the best part of that scene was when the men were like, "Man, women really love horses." And
Man,
it's like, "You don't get it." And that's the best.
women love men who love animals because they teach them how to be kind and empathetic.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, oh, the billowing shirt and the like hair
Mhm.
and the
It was
horses.
very Fabio.
It was. I love Fabio. Fuck me up with a Fabio trope.
Oh, that
When Channing
yeah.
Tatum showed up to that Lost City movie with Sandra Bullock and he was a carbon copy Fabio, I was like,
Yeah.
fuck me up with this movie.
That's funny.
I love Fabio. I have
Yeah.
always loved Fabio. You know who else I love? Michael Bolton.
Okay.
I love Michael
To
Bolton.
each their own.
I love Michael Bolton.
Oh, good. Oh, somebody has to. You
Somebody
know,
has
he
to.
deserves love too.
But we have arrived at the end. So, Jules, tell them if you're still comfy with the idea of George of the Jungle.
You know, its origin story, not a fan.
Yeah.
But I do find that Brendan Fraser was delightful to
Yeah.
watch in this film.
I am still very comfy because when you give the parameters of the 90s and you put that in play, they did a lot of things right.
Mhm.
Like they made sure that the jokes were at the expense of Lyle.
Right.
They made sure that Ursula awakening moment was because she was in an area that wasn't her own
Right.
and she found out that other people live life beautifully.
Yeah.
Brendan Fraser was respectful the entire time.
Yeah, which we don't see a lot of.
He was loving and beautiful.
Mhm.
There were gorillas and they played the bongos.
Yeah.
I also, the one note I did make was I love this cartoon intro. I've always loved this cartoon intro, but damn, don't explain Africa that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I've always loved the cartoon because it has the song. And it's a throwback to the cartoon.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, I giggled, I smiled the entire time, I danced. Like George of the Jungle still gets me right in the cozy part of my gut.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah. I think if I had watched it when I was younger, because
Mhm.
like I said, I was 13 when the movie came out. Maybe my opinion would be different, but I wasn't necessarily the age demographic for it when it released. So it's just different, hits
They
different.
they
I don't even
also
know if I'd watch it with my niece, if I'm gonna be honest with you, because I don't think my best friend would appreciate it.
I also think that they do a lot of fun things in movies that we don't do anymore.
Hmm.
Like I giggled at every stupid special effect, like when they put stars around his head
Yeah.
or when they made his face green. I truly am a fourth grader in my soul. Like I giggled at every stupid little effect. I love breaking the fourth wall.
Hmm.
I love that part where they go when Lyle falls into the shit and they go, and now we throw our heads back and laugh. Like they're
Yeah.
explaining to you
Yeah.
why it's so fucking funny. I love breaking the fourth wall. I love a snarky narrator.
Hmm.
There are a lot of components to this movie where I'm like, damn, we really don't try to have like a lot of fun with movies anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different. I mean, we talk about that all the time. Movie making is different these days,
Yeah,
and you're on the fence on what, or actually, you're not on the fence on. You don't care for the way we tell stories
I
anymore.
don't. I find it to be very dry, and I think people are trying really hard to be thoughtful, but what's ending up happening is that they're thoughtless because they won't lean into the story that actually needs to be told.
Yeah, one time, I was reading in a Steve Martin interview. I don't know, Josephine got something. Or no, I wasn't. It wasn't a Steve Martin came to town, and we bought tickets for the in-laws, and we took them for a late anniversary present because
Yeah.
the anniversary was in July and then opening was in August. And as we were leaving, father-in-law said, You know what I loved about Steve Martin? He just assumes his audience is smart. Like he just is going to go into
Yeah.
the jokes and he's going to give it to you and he doesn't have to explain anything. And it's timeless. Like I
Yeah.
understand that he and Marty Short are a duo, but Martin Short stuff is all timed, right? Like their special that they did with Netflix. Marty went for
Hmm.
the Kardashians. Steve was more of a, life
Yeah.
things that will still be funny in 20 years kind of comedy.
Like
Um
Robin Williams used to.
yeah, and I think that when we remove and we have to explain everything to the audience
Yeah.
rather than letting them infer and think and do that critical thinking that we say is so important but we've removed from schools,
Hmm.
we get that's I think that's where we get into that point of what is storytelling anymore, because you're literally spoon feeding us everything and I'm not a fan
Yeah.
of that. Like I want to be left with how I want to think it ended differently than the person next to
Yeah.
me. I think that's such a beautiful thing sometimes.
I'm gonna plug your Patreon because I started The Hate You Give, the book,
Oh,
not the movie, for book club on Sunday. I started it today, but that's fine. I can get it done.
yeah, it's if you're reading it on audio,
Yeah.
if you're doing audiobook, it's super quick.
Oh, no, I'm reading it.
It's
But
also a really quick
yeah,
quick read.
it looks like it's not because of 400 pages, but then you open it and you
It's
see how
because
much is
it's
actually on a
yeah,
page.
because and it's from a 16-year-old perspective,
Yes.
so she's very much it's very like it's quick.
So, what I love about the writing style of The Hate You Give is that she is writing from the point of view as if I had also grown up in Garden Heights the
Hmm.
entire time. There's no explaining why her neighborhood is like this.
Yeah.
There's no explaining why the men in her life are like this. It's just stated as fact.
Yeah.
And then you get to fill in those blanks.
Yeah. Yeah, and hang on for that ride because it's gonna get pretty. So the Patreon has a book club. Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous.
Yeah.
Patreon has a book club. That's what Natalie's referring to. And our first book is The Hate You Give. And it is written by Angie Thomas. She has two other books. The second one is called The Come Ups, takes place in the same neighborhood, but it's a couple years later and it's a different character. It's about a female rapper. And then Concrete Rose is about Star's parents, Maverick,
Okay.
and I forget what mama's name is. Um,
It starts with a T.
yeah, I don't. She always calls her mama, so I'm
No.
just like, ah. And then I hear she's got a fourth one coming out soon. Also, The Come Up has a movie adaptation coming out
Hmm.
on September 23rd, so you should check to see in your area. Because it's I love book to screen adaptations.
You plugged a lot of her work and like good job, Angie Thomas. Plug your own work.
Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm Julia with Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous. We analyze pop culture through the lens of race or gender and sometimes both. We are in it's not summer anymore, but we're still in rebroadcast mode because I recently moved. And so things are taking a lot longer to find so I can finish with season 4. Season 4 will drop sometime in October if I can get my shit together. We are focusing on wealthy women and representation in the media for season 4. Natalie's
Hmm.
on for an episode and we plan to have her on for more
More.
episodes. It's just I moved. We also have a book club, like I mentioned, and
Hmm.
that's open to everyone. But if you're a member of the Patreon, you get things like you get to access voting, you get to access a discount on
You get
book.
to participate, right? Too, or do they get to come to the Zoom?
They can come to the Zoom, but if you miss the Zoom, only
You miss
Patreon
it.
pals get the replay. You miss it, you miss it. And all the fun stuff. And I'm trying to think of what else there's. We have merch. For whatever reason, our seasonal stuff for fall didn't hit our shop. So I got to figure that out. But
Oh
we've
no,
got merch. And tomorrow night, Natalie and I will be on Instagram going live again. And we're diving into season 2 of One Tree Hill. And you know what that means.
we're back at the River Court, baby, baby. I was on someone else's show yesterday, and she has to pull up YouTube clips for us to watch. And at the end, it was ba, ba, da, da, da. And I was like,
Oh
here
my
he comes. And it
gosh.
was Chad and everything. I was like, I'm coming, Chad.
We're coming back.
Tuesday, I'm
Don't
back with
worry.
you.
Don't worry, Chad.
And I'm your host, Adorably Katona. To All the Men I've Tolerated Before comes out every Thursday. This past Thursday, we were with filmmaker John Lee Brody talking about representation in Hollywood and honestly just representing yourself in your life and your business. This week, we're with Katie Plouse of bitch, you need to hear this. And we're talking about what it's like to heal after your worst relationship. We have a feminist spooky line out. I got my all my past relationships still haunt me t-shirt. I'm wearing it tomorrow on the One Tree Hill show. So get ready. Spooky season is upon us. And there are more fun t-shirts like that, like the patriarchy, scarier than Freddy. Freddy Krueger,
Mm.
he was a nightmare, but have you ever ran into a Lyle in real life?
Oh, Lord have mercy. Or a Dan Scott.
We have a Patreon, and if you join the Patreon, and if you get enough people to join the Patreon, we're going to have a pen pal club. I have so many stickers. These aren't stickers I bought. These are stickers my pen pal bought, but you get the idea.
Fun!
And you all, I hope you still stay cozy and stay comfy.
Bye, friends.
Bye, friends.
I was going to tell you something.